From Prevention to Recovery with Marcel Gemme.
Welcome to From Prevention to Recovery. I'm your host, Marcel Gemme. Today I'm honored to speak with Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, a periodontist and dental implant surgeon from Bayside, New York, who has dedicated himself to substance use prevention education on a remarkable scale. Dr. Fialkoff is the founding sponsor and president of the Foundation for a Drug-Free World of the Americas chapter. Since 2006, his organization has conducted over 2,000 drug education events throughout the Eastern Seaboard and Central America, reaching more than 100,000 youth and families. He has forged national agreements with drug councils in the Dominican Republic, in Haiti, and partnered with military organizations in El Salvador and Guatemala. His commitment has earned him recognition from Senator Chuck Schumer, Senator Kristen Gillibrand, Congresswoman Grace Meng, the National Coalition of Latino Officers Foundation, World Council of Mayors, and ultimately received the International Freedom Medal for Drug Education in England. Through free educational materials, presentation, and workshops, Dr. Fialkoff has empowered young people and all communities with factual information to make informed decisions about substances. Dr. Fialkoff, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, Marcel, it's a pleasure to be with you. And I remember when we were in Canada together a few years ago, I had such a great time. And so it's my pleasure. And to speak to the Canadian people, and obviously this is going internationally also to many different countries. So I want to bid all of you good night from New York. It's very cold here. And you're looking at a Cuban guy. He's a Cuban-born American citizen. So that, it's been cold, but if you like skiing, it's perfect weather, Marcel.
Here
And,
too, by the way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you know what I was going to say is we're going to be talking about a really great foundation. And I'm a little bit prejudiced for my Foundation for a Drug-Free World. It's in about 160 countries worldwide in 22 languages. But let's put a little bit about it right at the beginning. There's a video that we have that's very to the point about why what we're going to talk about tonight is so important. So let's put that video on.
Nearly half of all public school children in the United States have tried drugs or alcohol by the time they're 13 years old.
A third of teens have gone to house parties where there was alcohol, pot, cocaine, ecstasy, or prescription drugs.
Over half of kids say it would be easy for them to get pot if they wanted some.
7 out of 10 teenagers have been offered an illegal drug.
Teenagers whose parents talk to them about drugs are 42% less likely to use drugs.
Get your kids the truth about drugs. drugfreeworld.org.
Can you tell us about the moment or experience that inspired you to dedicate so much of your time and resources to substance use prevention education?
That's a very good question. And actually, it was a few moments. I couldn't break it down to just one, but let me tell you. First started when I was in high school. And I grew up in Connecticut, very nice suburban kind of state, very together, and in a city called Manchester. There, during high school, one of my friends smoked marijuana. Back then, the THC level of marijuana was about 1 or 2%. Whereas today, we're talking about 15, 20, 25, maybe 30%, depending on the hybridization of that marijuana. And one of my friends would smoke it, and even at 1% THC, and he was, I don't want to say too much because then someone might know him, but he was quite a strong individual, very smart individual, very perceptive. And 1 or 2% THC would get him flying. And why do I say that? Because what happened is he liked it. He didn't realize that he was becoming addicted. And what happened is then he went to college. He was a very good athlete. And so he got a scholarship from a very important school. I'll keep it vague for deliberate reasons. And when he was there, unfortunately, he continued smoking marijuana and he was, expelled. But he was such a good athlete that they gave him another chance. And they said, go to this junior college, and if you stay clean, you can come back. It never happened. He got expelled from the other, and he had such great potential that never materialized. So that kind of like really stuck in my mind. Then years went by. I became a surgeon, a dental surgeon. I do implants and periodontal treatment, which is gum treatment. And someone in my family, which again I'll keep vague, I noticed there was something that was not quite right about this young person in my family. So I tried to speak to one of my family members who was a parent and explain that I thought maybe something should be looked into or, spoken to her or ask her some questions. But the parent, kind of like didn't want to be, didn't want it to happen. Was
Mm.
kind of like, I guess, in, trying to make it disappear by neglecting it or not looking and not confronting it. And so what happened is a few years went by and this person went to college, ended up having to leave because they were caught with drugs and they were expelled, but they were sent to rehab. So the person went to rehab, and after they did rehab, came back, went to college, seemed like it was okay for about a year and a half or so. And again, it occurred. So another time to rehab. And then finally, after about a half a year or so, came back to the college and finished college. And it seemed like, okay, now they're better. And what happened is then they went out into the workforce. And about a year later, same thing occurred, the third time to rehab. And, it really, the person was never the same again. And this person was a very vital, happy go lucky, young person. And as I said, I keep it vague, but it really impacted me that I said, what should I be doing? Because I saw that there was difficulty. People had difficulty looking at it. People had difficulty confronting it. They didn't want to see that maybe someone in their family or their child was using drugs. It was something to put aside, put in a closet. And I realized that if this was going to continue and what I'd experienced already, that I wouldn't feel good about it. And so I decided at that point that I should do something and somehow do something on a scale where I would affect the community. The one-on-one was great, but if I could affect the community, that would
Mm.
keep more of an agreement. And so I started looking around and decided, different programs and researching. And finally, I came across this Foundation for a Drug-Free World program.
That was a really good decision, by the way.
Well, I
Mm.
I definitely know for me, it's been amazing. It's very gratifying. I want to come up with something in the show that's not really part of the show, but it is. Many times people say, you're 71. How do you have energy? How is it you have energy?
Well,
And how is that possible? And I say to them, the key is to do something that makes you feel like you're really useful and you're helping your community. And because if it's just about you, it's great to have money because you can do things like skiing or like, or
yeah.
going on a vacation. That's wonderful. Or taking care of your kids' college. It's very important to be able to have some money. But the thing is, if our world's going down the tubes and things keep getting more violent, I realized that wasn't the solution and that I
Mm.
really should do something that was fulfilling. And it really is very fulfilling. And it's very interesting because the Surgeon General of the United States of America, who's a physician, he's not a philosopher, Vivek Murthy, MD, top physician in the country, and about 2 years ago came out with something very interesting online that our physical, not obviously mental and emotional health is obvious would come from relationships. But physically, scientifically, he showed that physical health, we're talking about heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and early mortality were totally related to our relationships and our relationships in the society. And so to give this as part of your show, Marcel, because you have this show about recovery, that's one way we can recover right away. Is I urge all of you who are watching the video, do something for your community. Get socially involved. You'll feel good about yourself. And now you know from the Surgeon General, you'll physically have more energy, you'll be healthier. So, it's a great plus.
Absolutely. Now, what are the common misconceptions about substances that you encounter when you're educating young people, and how do you address them effectively?
Great question, Marcel. I'll tell you one that is very common, and usually the young person tells their parents this. So this is probably good for the parent or for those young people watching it, realize that it's going to get rid of something that you were thinking, but here we go. So you always hear, or you hear a lot, you say, well, you know what? Marijuana is a plant. It grows in nature. So since it's a plant, it's natural. And, plants are natural, like flowers, and they have nice smell, and, spinach or broccoli, so marijuana is like that too, and it's a plant. And, it's organic, and organic things are good for you. So that's the first misconception, because we'll go back into history. When Socrates, back in Greek times, was sentenced to death because of what he had done within the society, he actually drank a beverage that was made from plants. Unfortunately, even though it was organic, it was called hemlock. And hemlock, being a poison, caused his death, which he actually did deliberately as his method of death. But that was organic, that was natural, and it was a plant, and the hemlock obviously causes death. There are obviously other plant-based products which are also poisons and are organic and natural, but just the mere fact of that being plant-based or natural doesn't mean that it's not going to be harmful or even cause death, addiction, and God knows what else, other toxicities. So it's very important. That's one of the common ones. Another one is this. Well, I'm just doing it now, Dad. Come on, Dad, Mom. This is a different era, technologically advanced. And when I get older, I know I'm going to stop. I'm going to give you now some actual data that's from the Center of Disease Control, the CDC of America, and the National Institute of Health, the NIH. And they both have, have looked into this, and they both have published that both vaping because of the nicotine ingredient, and marijuana affect brain development, which occurs between 13 years of age. This is the physical brain development, to 25 years of age. So from 13 to 25 is really the age group that you have a tremendous number of youth experimenting with vaping, with the different flavorings, with the marijuana. And it's important to understand that if you vape just the flavoring, you're harming yourself, because the CDC found that 99% of the flavorings had nicotine. 99%.
Wow.
You're going to have nicotine. You're going to affect your brain development. There's many other things that it does. I don't want to really get overwhelming, but it affects your physical health, your heart, many different things that nicotine does, aside from addicting you to the nicotine. Sometimes people think, well, it's just, I just love the flavorings. No, you don't. It's not that you don't love the flavorings. The flavorings have nicotine. And what happens, the nicotine, when it's smoked, goes through your system into the brain, where it releases dopamine. And dopamine is naturally occurring in the body. But the problem is, when the body regulates it, it's okay. But when you're regulating it through vaping, the body becomes lazy, like anything else. The body doesn't produce anymore. And lo and behold, now you're dependent on the vape, because you have to vape in order to feel normal. Because if you don't vape, you're going to not feel good. And you may think, well, it's the flavor. I just love the flavoring. I crave the flavoring. But that's another misconception, is that there's no harm to your perceptions, your intelligence, your awareness. And if you're somebody out there watching who's young, you've got your dreams, the things that you want and you want to achieve in your life. Don't vape. Don't use marijuana. You can actually just, I'll tell you about Marcel, they can get high different ways. Exercise, runner's high. You can exercise. The body releases endorphins and dopamine and cannabinoids. The body has its own marijuana. When you run, the body releases it. If you dance, if you have good music, if you hang out with good people, hang out with nice people. There's different people are not all the same. Hang out with nice people. Do social activities. Then it's funny, what you eat also has an impact. So if you eat more nutritious, your body will actually excrete more of these hormones. So you know what? Just like you would say, well, I want to vape or I want to get high. You can get high. So eat well, exercise, hang out with great people, do social activities, and you will get high.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, with the Foundation for Drug-Free World, you have conducted over 2,000 events. That's amazing, by the way, since 2006. And what does your typical education presentation look like? On how do you tailor it for different age group?
Great question. Well, here, I tell you what, let's do this. I'd like to play the second video here. I'll tell you why. Because this is a policewoman, and with a problem she found and encountered with her brother, and what she says about it. I think it's important because then we realize with what she says, which is a real life story, with the importance of what we're going to answer this question. So let's play that video, please, Marcel.
I think a lot of kids get into drugs because they don't know the truth behind them. And I personally have a brother that struggles with substance abuse, and he started at the age of 16. And I feel that if he was better educated, like learning the Drug-Free World program, he would have made better choices.
Great. So now that we've watched the video, let's go into what the events what they look like. What do we go through? So the first thing we do is we ask them a question. And I ask them, who knows what a drug is? And they answer, well, a drug is something that you get from the doctor. I say, okay, great. And I ask again, who knows what a drug is? Oh, that's something you take like an antibiotic. Or somebody else will say, well, if I have pain, I'll take Tylenol. And that's a drug, and it gets rid of my pain. Somebody else will say, oh, my mother has high blood pressure, and she takes a drug. It's for high blood pressure. I said, those are all great answers, and I want to get them involved. That's why I do that, to involve them. And for those out there watching this, you want to involve your audience, especially young people. So let them answer, and don't make them wrong. Just say, great, that's a great answer. And then usually none of them will get it. And then they say, okay, I'm going to give you one that you didn't have. Are you ready? And they go, yeah, here we go. A drug is a poison. They go, what? I said, that's right. A drug is a poison. And I tell them, a little bit will stimulate you and get you high. That's why some people, when they drink, they get more giddy and they're more able to speak because it removes their inhibitions with a very little amount. The problem with drugs is that you're never satisfied, so then you take a little bit more. Now a little bit more, I go over with them that the drug starts making you sleepy. And they get that, and, I tell them I like stagger, like, and, so that they get it, they start laughing. And then the third thing, I go to them, but unfortunately, if you continue, if you're lucky, you just pass out. But if you're like some other actors, I won't mention any names, who put a needle in their arm, you die. And it's not just
Mm.
passing out, but you have death, and which is why it's so important not to get addicted and not to get dependent to begin with. So I go over all that with them, and then I say to them, okay, but you're probably saying to me now, but what do I do? Because if I want to feel good, sometimes I don't feel bad. Come on, Dr. Fialkoff. Well, you're like an old person. And so I go, all right, well, I say, okay, here's what you do. When you played football or you played soccer or you were learning how to do a ballet, probably once in a while your ankles really hurt and it was painful. And maybe you fell when you were practicing a ballet move. Why did you continue? And they say, well, because I wanted to do ballet. I say, but you had pain, didn't you? They go, yes. So why did you continue? Well, because I wanted to. It was something I wanted to learn. So I have that example, and I do the same thing about sports and how in sports you hit each other sometimes and you fall on the ground, you scrape your knee, maybe you even bleed a little bit, and then you get back in the game because you want to get back in the game. You don't sit there and start taking some kind of psychotropic drug, say, oh my God, I don't feel good, take codeine on the field. No, you go back in the game. So I go over with them that life is a game. And just like in the game of sports and of ballet, if they will play the game of life the same way, they just need to be on their, what I call on their purpose. And I explain to them, if you're on your purpose, which is your dream, your illusion, what you want to have in your life or you want to achieve, then you're going to be willing to play that game. And then that way you can do the same thing in your life. So that's what I do with them. And this way they have a solution. It's not just telling them, say no, because if I just tell them, say no, but I don't give them a solution, there is no solution. So we give them a solution.
That's good. Now, as a dental professional, you've mentioned seeing the oral health consequences of substance abuse firsthand. How does this medical perspective impact your approach?
Well, that's a great question. One of the things, and I want to really address this to all the health professionals watching this, podcast, is we really need to take a look because as health professionals, we're responsible. We take a Hippocratic oath and that we're not going to have our patients imbibe. We don't want to suggest any kind of medication that's going to be harmful to them. We want to take them away from that, and so they get healthy. And we have such a tremendous opportunity when we see people because they come in for examinations and they're there for our advice. In fact, the American Dental Association has really stated to all the dental profession that they would like us to counsel our patients. And a very interesting fact from a survey that they did, they found that 70% of dental patients actually would desire for the dentist to let them know their feelings about drugs, which is very interesting because I know some dentists were very reticent, concerned. Maybe they felt they were overstepping their bounds. But no, as a health professional, we're charged with the fact of wellness, people's, health or happiness. And so it's important. The way I tell you, really became aware of it even more so is I did a surgical procedure and it was a very beautiful young woman. So, you really, you always want it to work out, but especially you don't want the gum to recede or have holes in the mouth, especially on a woman, and especially a young woman. And so what happened is we did a procedure because unfortunately she needed a tooth to be removed. We had to remove it, do a bone graft, and to get to heal, which I do all the time, and it always heals. It didn't heal. She was a healthy person. She wasn't diabetic, but she didn't heal. And so I said, don't worry about it. I'll redo it for you and you'll heal. Because I didn't think twice. We did it over for her. I didn't charge her. And again, it didn't heal. This time I said to her, it doesn't make any sense. Why is this happening? Let me ask you a few questions. Is there anything any kind of drug or anything that you do? She goes, well, I smoke marijuana. I said, oh. She goes, why? I said, well, because all the scientific studies that are coming out are showing that marijuana affects surgical healing. It causes, deprivation of oxygen. Your oxygen goes down. There's a lot of toxins that come in with marijuana. It affects the vascularity. And so what happens is the person does not heal the same. And that's probably what it is. And, the most amazing response, I felt bad I hadn't done this with her at the beginning. She said to me, then I stopped. Just like that. She says, I stopped. And she stopped. And, but
Wow.
I should have, absolutely. But, I should have done that right at the beginning. So for those of you watching who are out there who are in the health profession, do it at the beginning. Educate your patients. And to me, that's why I'm a stout and a very strong advocate of this program. As a dentist, I think as any health professional, I really think all of us need to do it. And one thing I wanted to point out, Marcel, you don't have to be licensed. You don't have to get permission. If you go on drugfreeworld.org,
Mm.
drugfreeworld.org, and you click on that link and check it out and you like it, you can get the material online. You can put it in your phone and play it in your as an app. If you want to order material and you say, well, I want to order material and run a group, and they ask you how you found out, you can tell them, I saw one of Dr. Fialkoff's show. You'll actually see me. There's a picture of my daughter, Megan, and I there because we started this back in 2006, and, we're on the website. But I urge you to start. And in fact, I wanted to play a video that's actually from a DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency of the United States of America, agent, one of the agents, really great guy, and a video interview we did and what his feelings were on the importance of education, prevention, and what he thought of the Foundation for a Drug-Free World. So if you can, Marcel, let's put that video on.
Absolutely. It's rolling.
I'm here with James J. Hunt, who is the special agent in charge of the DEA New York Division. Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Yeah. Talk about a little bit about what you do with the drug-free world.
DEA, we're primarily an enforcement agency, a police agency, so we enforce the federal narcotics laws. We basically lock up the biggest drug traffickers in the world. But with that, we know as a police and law enforcement agency, you're never going to tackle the problem of drug abuse alone. So we also work with the educational organizations, rehabilitation organizations. I think it's very important. Educating people like Foundation for Drug-Free World are very important because they help recognize the problem and educate people.
You think prevention is the key?
To solving the problem, yes, because police cannot do it alone. There's always going to be bad guys, and we're very good at catching the bad guys. The Chapo Guzmans of the world, they'll get caught. But if they don't have their bad stuff to sell, there's nothing in it for them. So if the market dries up, they're out of business. So prevention is key.
Talk a little bit about, and if this is important to you, when somebody is actually had that history, they've had the drug history, and they go and they talk to the youth, is that different from maybe someone who hasn't? Or, I know a cop, for instance. What would be the difference?
People can learn from people who have beat the problem, beat the addiction, and learn how they did it. Unfortunately, opiates, it's a very, very difficult habit to beat, but some people overcome it. So those people that do, having them go out and talk to people that are struggling with it is key because it gives people hope that somebody can beat it.
Why do you think there's such a, when kids say, oh, they're prescription, or that's, opiates, they're prescribed by a doctor compared to street drugs? Why do you think there's such a, kids don't see that it's all drugs?
Yeah, when kids are young, and I know many young people that start out like this, they started using pills just to get high. They thought because it was pharmacy sold it or a doctor prescribed it, it couldn't hurt you. And they didn't realize what they would get into. Opiates are very, very strongly addictive. So they played with them like people experiment with alcohol. You can't experiment with opiates. And sooner or later, they found themselves with an opiate addiction. Pills got more expensive, harder to get, and they resorted to heroin. Now they're in the streets injecting heroin in their arm when a year before they would have said, I would never put a needle in my arm. Nobody starts out wanting to be an addict. It happens. You know, they evolve into it.
Do you find and do you see that criminal activity starts first with drugs?
Drug addiction breeds criminal activity. Because what inevitably happens is when somebody gets an addiction, they're not prepared for it. And it gets a hold of them in their lives. So normally they start stealing from their families. That's the model. They start stealing from their families first, grandparents. Then when the family realizes they got a problem, they start hiding stuff away. Now they get more brazen. They start doing burglaries, steal from other people. Mostly friends the first time out. Then when that dries up, then they go to the street, resort to crime. Oftentimes young women resort to prostitution to feed a habit. Men to burglaries, petty crime. So it does fuel crime, definitely.
Tell us why a drug-free world and organizations like a drug-free world are so needed in the country right now.
I think organizations like a drug-free world are paramount. Anytime, and I applaud them, anytime organizations will bring awareness to this problem, private organizations bring awareness to this problem is key. Cops cannot do it alone.
Thank you so much for what you do.
Welcome, thank you.
Yes, and congratulations on tonight.
Thank you.
So I've sent like thousands of people to rehab. And one thing that I've like really realized is, you know, sometimes someone goes to a treatment, it takes like 2, 3, 4 months. They're going to do several treatment. So this is months, and some people doesn't make it. Like for 1 or 2 hours of drug education. And I remember when I was in high school, you know, there was this guy coming from prison and, you know, telling us like how dangerous it was and, you know, like trying to scare us. And it just made us more curious because, you know, it was not education. It was just to like scare us. So drug education is so important.
Absolutely. You know, Marcel, you make a very good point that, you know, the right way of actually getting through to any human being is to elicit their interest and their curiosity, not to shut them down. If you know, I'm sure all the parents out there have seen this, is if you try to enforce something, you get the reverse. And the next thing you know, like you said, that the person's doing exactly what you didn't want them to do. So my suggestion for those of you watching is what I would do is if you get the booklets, the first thing I would do is even before you try to do anything with your, you know, with your child, your youth, whatever, your teenager, or your 20-year-old, is, you know, first thing, just establish a rapport with them. Don't even try to do anything about anything else. Just ask them, you know, how they're doing. How's their day going? And, you know, if right now you don't have a great relationship, so you know what, maybe it'll take a week or so, or a few weeks, but it's time well spent before you even worry about starting to get to like what you don't like or that, you know, the drugs or, you know, why don't you go to sleep earlier? What I would suggest, build up your rapport with your child, get them so they see that they can actually talk to you. It may take a little bit of time. You know, I was guilty of the same thing as a parent. Believe me, I'm not telling you from a ivory tower. We all have made mistakes, but the thing is to start. So just let them speak and realize that they won't just do it immediately at the beginning. It may take time. It may take more time than we'd like. And then as far as the literature, what I would say, rather than saying, you know, there's this great book, why don't you look at it? Don't do that. What I would do is throw it in your den or put it on the kitchen table with some mail and put it on, don't even say anything. If they ask you, what's this thing? I said, oh, I don't know. It came in the mail, something, you know, I'm curious. You probably would know more about that than I do. Take a look at it. Let me know what you think about it. Because, you know, I don't have a chance to read that right now. You know, just play a game with it. Like, actually, sometimes that probably you've noticed this, that when you actually go away from something or don't even pay attention to it, it kind of comes to you. It's like a reversal. And, you know, I learned that through one of my friends. He was really great. And this is funny because we were very young. And he was a good-looking guy. And he was very good with women. So he was teaching me. He goes, Ben, look. You can't just go right up. You can go right up and speak to them, but you got to kind of be willing to just let it go and play a game. But cat and mouse, but don't just always chase. And you know what? He was right.
He was
So
right.
that applies to everything in life. So, yeah, absolutely, Marcel.
Now, you successfully expanded your prevention work from New York to Latin America. Are there unique challenges of implanting drug education program in other countries?
No, it's interesting. I actually found that Latin America was very open and had very little resistance. It seems like the Latin descent, they have a very close-knit family.
Mm.
And I found really that in Latin America, it went really quickly. And, they've all taken to it and they understand. But I think really I found that the only thing is that like in the United States and maybe in Canada, it seems like we don't have as much time. It seems like there's
Mm.
a lot more stress on that we have to work, we're traffic, we have to do this. I mean, we have a lot of benefits of what we have technologically and in terms of goodies, material goodies and technological goodies. But it seems like we pay a little bit of a toll that we're more stressed and we have a little less time to just relate and whatever. So to me, I think as I give this presentation with you, I would say if you are in one of our countries, which is I consider, my country, and to me, Canada is like a neighbor to me, is like my brother or whatever. So
Tot-
we have to take a look at that. We're trading off some of our humanity for our materialism. And so we need to take a look at that and see how to try and control our schedules and control our desires so that we have a little more time for ourselves and that the wealth, you can have a lot of money and be sick. And then people say, oh my God, why didn't I take care of my health? So I think the first thing is be healthy, look at it, avoid stress, and try to have a little more for you, or go to the gym or go to dance or just relax with your wife or whoever it is. I think that's so important, Marcel. And, I think at this point, if we can, there's a, a great video that goes over the Foundation for a Drug-Free World program, and it's called a public service announcement. You can get these public service announcements on your phone. You can watch them on your computer, and then later on you'll be able to know when to pick which one for someone. The beauty of them is that these public service announcements, as you will see on this video, are tailored. They're about 45 seconds to a minute. They're tailored to hit very quickly, get interest, not overwhelm, and to really elicit a response, really a desire. And
Mm.
they're quite amazing. So, let's put on the first one so they can see what's available to them on drugfreeworld.org with the public service announcements.
Let's roll.
They said I wouldn't get hooked after the first hit.
Hey, stop!
They said I wouldn't get hooked after the first hit. They lied. Find out the truth about drugs. drugfreeworld.org.
You've received recognition and awards from numerous government officials and law enforcement organizations, including the White House. What advice would you give to other professionals or community members who want to start their own local prevention education initiative, but don't know where to begin?
Okay, well, the first thing is the fact that you're even looking at it. I want to actually laud you and acknowledge you. And you say, well, what for? I'm just curious. No. That's the first step to everything. It's very important to actually have some curiosity, to even look at something, because it means you're going in a direction. And, the first step to doing anything is realizing that you don't know. Because when you realize that you don't know, you go, well, you know what? Maybe there's something I can learn. And it means you're open, you're willing, you're reaching. And I can tell you that you're going to benefit so much, much more than you even realized. So the first thing is just to validate that you're looking at it. And I would validate, right now I'm going to validate you. Second thing is realize that when you start, don't expect to be perfect. You're not going to get the Nobel Peace Prize immediately. It takes a little bit of doing. You know, an actor has to really practice. The main thing is to look at something is that 113,000 Americans died in 2023 of illicit drugs. And if you are willing to help educate, you're going to bring that number down. Because why don't we drink the water out on the street after it rains? Even if we're really thirsty, we know not to go sit and go down to the gutter and drink that water because we've been educated that that water is dirty, it has germs, and it'll make you sick. That came from the education. So that's the best thing to do with drugs, and I want to give you a comparison, is this. I told you 113,000 Americans died in 2023 of drugs. Guess how many died in a 10-year Vietnam War? Now pause for a moment as you're thinking, and now I'm going to give you the answer. In a 10-year Vietnam War of bullets, bombs, and chemical warfare, we lost 58,000 Americans. If you multiply what we lost in 1 year in 2023, which was 113,000, times 10 years, that means we would lose 1,113,000 Americans in comparison to 58,000 we lost in the Vietnam War. The point is evident. The point is clear. But you have to ask yourselves, this is another important point, why isn't anybody protesting? In fact, they're legalizing. Wow. That's like legalizing war. Why is that happening? And you say, geez, that's a good question. I'll tell you why it's happening. When a person takes drugs, and in the drug world, what starts happening is people start losing consciousness of what's important and priorities. And unfortunately, our societies have increased in drug use. In fact, in America, 73 million Americans take some form of psychotropic drug.
Wow.
73 million are unhappy to take a psychotropic drug. So we have to realize the tremendous magnitude of what's going on and that our society is not as awake as it was when people protested in the 60s and 70s the Vietnam War because they didn't want deaths. But nobody's protesting what's going on now. So that's the effect that I wanted to say, Marcel, on the show of the drugging that's going on. I say drugging because we're voluntarily doing that when we smoke, when we utilize, and we're harming ourselves. And somehow we've got to wake up. And that's what the beauty is of this Drug-Free World program.
That's very good and very well done for what you've done.
I think it's just something that all of us need to do. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're here at the Greater New York Dental Meeting 2025. Wow. First of all, the Javits Center, just taking this place in, the ambiance, the architecture, the space is beautiful. And being here with my colleagues, you know, I'm a periodontist for 45 years, but being with my colleagues is always like, I don't know, there's a special energy that you feel when you have people that you love and people that you have so much reality with. And so I'm here for this program that's so crucial for our kids, Drug-Free World, the Truth About Drugs program that we can get at drugfreeworld.org. And so we're here presenting it to my fellow colleagues because a lot of dentists are helping with this drug problem. 113,000 Americans died of this drug epidemic. So we need to do something. It's a great program. It's there for you. You can get it at Drug-Free World. It's in Spanish at vidasindroga.org, whatever you need. And if you want to contact me, fdfwamericas@gmail.com. I'll give it to you again, fdfwamericas@gmail.com. Text me, call me, email me. Let's make a drug-free world.
Now, to end, what would you say to a kid who is feeling peer pressure to use drugs or alcohol?
That's a very good question. And let me use my experience, because you know what? Rather than preaching to people, I don't like preaching. I don't like to be told what to do. So I don't like repeating that with other people. And when I was in high school and college, there was a lot of pressure. In college, there was a lot of pressure at the beer blasts and to drink beer, and not to just drink one, but to drink, 4, 5, and if you didn't do that, you weren't cool, or you got made fun of, and the same thing in the neighborhood in high school when this friend of mine that I told you would smoke marijuana. I never did. I remember one time I tasted it because they wanted me to taste it, and I did. It had a horrific taste. I didn't understand what they liked about it, and I just didn't want it. And but there's a lot of pressure. And in college, I actually for a time did start drinking beer. I wasn't like a perfect person, and it was a thing in college that probably now it's marijuana in college. I don't know if it's still beer because I'm not in college anymore. Probably it's marijuana now, and they probably think that the marijuana is fine. And so what I would say is you should try to find the best solution to not get in that type of environment. So if you're going to be, let's say, your dorm, and you know that it's going to be drug use or, some kind of whiskey or whatever, it's always going to be your decision what you want to do. But I would try to go in some of the direction of that oh, you didn't realize, wow, you're supposed to go to there's some kind of course that you've got, or that your family was going to pick you up, or I want to really go, but my friends and I are going to go play basketball. I'll see you later, and I'll catch up with you later. And just you're going to have to make up your own scenario. There's no set scenario. It depends on what's going on. But what I would try to do also is, if you associate with people who are more into sports, who are more into exercise, who are more into music, who have hobbies, who like to communicate without needing drugs. And you can tell, we all know. And the mistake that I made back then, initially, was the people that I hung out with. But as years went on, when I became a junior, it's very interesting. I'll tell you this very funny story. And I actually was a roommate for the last 2 years with someone that everybody in the dorm thought it was going to be chaos, because they thought I was too nice and he loved to drink. And it was the most interesting thing that the 2 years we were together, we became great friends. He stopped drinking.
Wow.
Totally. Nobody could believe it in the dorm. He totally stopped. We used to hang out. We played basketball together, and we talked in the room. He actually started studying, which was unbelievable. And so we would study together, and we developed agreements that we had. So what I would say to you, search out the people in your dorm or in your school or in your friends. Search out the ones that are more that way, who don't need to have this crutch, who seem happy, who are not always criticizing something and being negative about something, because those people are probably not very happy. They're going to go to drugs as a solution. So just try to do the best you can with that. It's in your hands. Realize what I told you. Marijuana and vaping affect your brain development. So if you're anywhere from 13 to 25, which is pretty all the young people watching this podcast, do you really want to not have the ability when you're a little older to have the car that you want, to have the job that you want? maybe to have the opportunity to go skiing or to go to Cancun more. Because if you're more productive, life will reward you. And later on, when the other ones are suffering, you realize, wow, I remember that podcast with Marcel and some guy, Dr. Ben. That day in January 2026, wow. And if that happens, I tell you what, write Marcel or I, let us know what happened. And he and I will both put you on our show because I have my own show. I'll plug it for a moment. It's called A Time for Truth Show, and it's on Optimum Cable 1014. I would love for you guys to watch it. There's a lot of videos there, like Marcel has on his podcast. You watch his on attention, communicating, productivity, nutrition, exercise. I have Globetrotters on there. I have athletes on there. I have politicians on there and a lot of people from the different countries. So I welcome you. It's on YouTube, A Time for Truth Show. Marcel, I've had a great time with you. We got to do this some more.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thank you very much. It's going to help a lot of people. And also, I'll put the link for the Drug-Free World in the transcript, so anyone can click on it and get to this fantastic drug education program. Thank you.
Absolutely. Before I almost forgot, if you need to contact me, you can email fdfwamericas@gmail.com. I'll give it to you again. fdfwamericas@gmail.com. You can write an email, and I'd be glad to answer you. And if you can't get me, email Marcel, and let's make a drug-free world.
Absolutely. And I'll put the email in the transcript.
Oh, it's been fun.
But yeah.
They said if I did coke, I could party all night. Thanks, Mom.
Have a great time.
I'm just loving that high.
Come on, girl, you really need to open the door.
They said if I did coke, I could party all night. They lied. Find out the truth about cocaine. drugfreeworld.org.